Not gonna lie, if you're a fan of an Eastern Conference team, bro, this is by far your biggest nightmare. Roughly 300 days ago, Jason Tatum went down with a torn Achilles, an injury that historically speaking has been career-altering and for many, even career-ending. However, thanks to modern medicine and better training regimen, many people have been able to recover from a torn Achilles within a calendar year, but that's still 365 days. Because of this, as well as the Celtics losing Al Horford, Jrue Holiday, Porzingis, and Luke Kornet, many people assumed that this year was going to be a gap season for the Celtics, as Boston has been a fairly consistent deep postseason team for the better part of the last 6 to 7 years throughout the Tatum and Brown era. And in the beginning part of the season, it seemed as if like that was going to happen. The Celtics were struggling, the offense wasn't clicking, and Joe Mazzulla was trying to figure out who was going to be consistent characters in his rotation. However, ever since December to where we are right now, it certainly has changed. The Celtics quickly found themselves with the second best record in the Eastern Conference, the second best offense in the league, a top 10 defense in the NBA, with the second best net rating in the league as well. In the last 10 games, they've had a record of 8-2 with a top 4 offense, second best defense, and again, second best net rating in the league, with Jaylen Brown being in many people's MVP conversation as he is averaging a career high in points and assists while also grabbing 7 rebounds and easily one of the best mid-range shooters in the NBA. And defensively, what Derek White is doing to this team on a night in to night out basis while being the table setter that many people thought that he wasn't going to be, as well as everyone else contributing so much so from a three-point shooting perspective that the Boston Celtics are able to attempt 42 threes on a night-to-night basis and shoot them at a clip of 36 to near 37%. Yes, the Celtics have been that good during a season that was supposed to be a gap year. And now Jason Tatum has just fast-tracked his recovery to the point where he said he's making his season debut just 2 games ago. And after watching the Celtics go up against the Mavericks and another title-contending team out east in the Cleveland Cavaliers, not gonna lie, if that's the worst version of Jason Tatum for the rest of this season, Boston is right back to being the favorites to come out of the East, because that's how scary it's about to be for the rest of this regular season as well as the playoffs. Now, in this video, of course, I have to be honest, and there were just a handful of things that I really wasn't that impressed with when it comes to Tatum. First was his jump shot shooting, then you have his shot creation, especially through contact, and even his ability to contribute defensively at a very high end. It was pretty shaky, especially when he was dealing with contact from bigger players. But I'm gonna be honest with you, if those are the only things that Tatum was not impressing me with, that is completely fine. Those are all things that are fixable in the next 10 to 15 games. Tatum will continue to trust his body, especially through contact. He will get his legs under him with his jump shot shooting, and as time progresses, he will become more aggressive on the defensive side of the floor, especially when he's roaming and helping. What I was looking for in these first 2 games is how aggressive was Tatum going to be, especially attacking the basket and trusting his body to get to the rim. Can he contribute defensively at all? But more importantly, how will he be able to impact the game beyond just putting the ball in the basket? Because again, that's something that I feel like we all knew he was going to struggle with anyway. And again, it's kind of shaky and scary for a lot of Eastern Conference teams, because for me, he checked all of those boxes. If you look at the stat sheet, of course, the numbers really don't stand out to you, especially from a scoring and efficiency perspective. But when you watch Tatum, especially against the Cavaliers out the gate, he was attacking the basket, getting downhill, finding himself either at the rim or at the free throw line drawing a foul. That's something that I wanted to see out of him, because that makes him a much more dynamic player than someone like Jordan Walsh or Gonzalez or Luka Garza. These are players who've all been really good and complementary pieces to a team that's trying to get the most out of the offense that they can with the supporting cast that's around Jaylen Brown and Derek White. But they're not going to be able to get to the basket. They're not going to be able to go downhill. Effectively, if their jump shot isn't falling, then their offense is going to be inconsistent, especially what this team may need on a night in and night out basis. So adding that level of dynamic play by getting downhill, attacking the basket, even when Tatum did try to get downhill and he hit front of the rim, All those things is something that I wanted to see, even if he missed a shot, because that lets me know who he is going to be or has the capability of being moving forward, which is much more dynamic than a lot of the other players' minutes that he's going to be taking away from. Second thing I was looking for is defensive contributions. Tatum has never really been this all-time or even consistently elite on-ball defender. How Mazzulla has used him in his defensive schemes over the past couple of years is more as a roamer, a backline help, and a switchable, versatile forward that in a pinch can go out on the perimeter and defend somebody to close out a possession. And crazy enough, outside of a few incidences where the contact really had him shying away a little bit, he still provided that value pretty consistently. There's moments where I can see him helping, digging at a defender, closing out accordingly, and switching in a pinch to, again, close out possessions. There were even moments when the Cavaliers attempted to pick on him and try to see if they can get by him, but it didn't really work out. And even moments where he stood in front of Donovan Mitchell, but the help rotated a little bit too much because they didn't necessarily know how much they can trust Tatum, but he seemed fine. Again, outside of a few moments where he's trying to fight through contact, in particular go around screens, I saw a player that can have immediate contributions to a team that needs another roamer, that needs another smart, intelligent defender, especially because it can allow Derek White to roam around a little bit more, knowing that he has some type of backline help behind him, but more importantly, making sure they get the most out of Jaylen Brown as an on-ball defender, because I do believe having those three on the floor together with one another, the switch and versatility of a Tatum, the on-ball dog of a Jaylen Brown, and the IQ and smarts of knowing when to help and when not to help a Derek White really does aid this team defense to levels that can rival many teams out in the Eastern Conference. But the final, and I would argue the most important thing that I was looking for out of Tatum was his ability to fill in the stat sheet, figure out ways to impact the game besides points and efficiency, because I knew those were things that he was going to struggle with, and I got that. Against the Dallas Mavericks, Tatum came down with 12 rebounds and recorded 7 assists. Now, in the modern NBA, some of these rebounds really aren't that challenging, so I'm not going to gas all of them, but there were several moments where Tatum, he would challenge himself to jump higher than opposing teams, tip the ball to some of his teammates to make sure they can close possessions out accordingly, and of course, one of the very few shots that he made in both of the games was a putback dunk. So again, these are things that are clear positives to what this team needs desperately at that 4 spot, especially on the boards with Big Vooch sidelined for a couple of games dealing with a finger injury. But the most important thing that I wanted to see were the assists. How was Tatum going to shift the defense and create open opportunities for his teammates? Because that has been the separator of who he has been recently in contrast to who he was in the beginning stages of his career, as he's picked up a lot of those responsibilities. And to be honest with you, that is what this offense has been missing at times. And crazy enough, because how aggressive he was out the gate in both of these games, the opposing team had to respect him as an offensive threat, even when he wasn't making his shots, which is the reason why being aggressive was so important for him. There are certain moments against the Dallas Mavericks and even times against the Cavaliers as well, where he's getting 2 on the ball, the defense is shifting, they're giving him attention, and he's getting open opportunities and easy buckets for his teammates. And no, it just wasn't in transition. Even as someone who can find the corner 3-point shooter, or someone who can just stand at the top of the key and freeze 2 defenders and find someone dumping down to the basket, these are all things that, again, someone like a Jordan Walsh or a Luka Garza just wouldn't be able to do, nor should they even really be expected to do so. That level of dynamic play, in my opinion, is what really puts them over the top. Even if Tatum isn't the scorer that he needs to be, those are all things that will come with time. We all know that Tatum is going to get stronger, better conditioning, and once he falls on the floor a few times and pick himself back up, he's going to trust his body even more. But more importantly, the way in which Mazzulla is coaching this new offensive scheme that isn't as much as switch hunting, rather than being more methodical in how they attack space, making sure that there's constant screens being set, slipping to the basket, and having a little bit of a hub play at the elbows with Kata or someone else. These are all things that will just make Tatum's job much easier, while also providing another scoring threat on the floor for everyone else that should, again, make their job easier as well. That's the reason why Tatum being on this roster is really scary. This is a team that has already figured out ways to beat teams without him. And even if Tatum isn't the player that we saw last year, a top 5 MVP candidate, first or second team All-NBA, who is a really good defender as well, even if he doesn't provide at that level, he can still be good enough to be a contributing factor to a team that's already one of the top 4 to 5 teams in the NBA. And having that type of addition towards the tail end of the season is certainly scary for an Eastern Conference that was already wide open, but as time continues, I don't necessarily know if it has been solidified at all. Cleveland recently has been great with the addition of James Harden, but they literally just lost to Boston. Detroit recently has been on a bit of a slide, and their offensive problems without Cade on the floor certainly glaring, and there's times when even when Cade is on the floor and it's still pretty bad. And then you have the Knicks where kind of just depends on the day. Who knows what type of productivity you're going to get out of them. And then the defensive concerns between Brunson and Towns is still concerning. These are all things, however, I do think that a lot of these teams may be able to figure out before the playoffs begin. But as we give them more time to iron out a couple of their wrinkles, it also gives Tatum more time to get more established and put himself in position to play more than just 27 minutes, to be more of an impactful scorer than someone who's shooting sub 40% from the field. Have him be more of an impactful defensive player than just having him roam on the weakest offensive player on the opposing team. The more time that we give everyone else to kind of get their stuff together before the playoffs, the stronger the Boston Celtics will be. And that is really, really scary because they already look good. If you're a team in the Eastern Conference, I just don't know how you prepare yourself for a playoff run where you're going to have to go up against a team that has a coach that's better than you, a starting 5 that shoots better than you, a team that potentially is going to be deeper than yours as well. And now, even with this being the worst version of Tatum, I personally believe what he can provide to the team is better than what a lot of teams have on their bench. So Tatum continues to get better. Who knows what this team will look like? Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section below. What do you think about the Boston Celtics, Tatum in his first 2 games back, and more importantly, the Eastern Conference landscape as a whole? Because even though the Eastern Conference may still feel open, I definitely don't think it's going to be that way much longer if Tatum continues to progress the way I believe that he will. But with that being said, make sure you hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and if you missed my last video, make sure you check it out. It'll be somewhere on the screen. It's about the Spurs and how they've been dominating. But until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.